Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Karis May, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Corporal Jeanette McNally. We are honoured to acknowledge Minister Zaher Hanegbi, Prime Minister's Office, Israel, accompanied by the Honourable Mr Shmuel Ben Shmuel, Ambassador of Israel to Australia. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Australia, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony from around Australia. We are particularly pleased to welcome delegates of the RSL and Services Clubs New South Wales who are joining us this evening. The bugle being sounded in today's ceremony has been provided by the RSL and Services Clubs New South Wales and is believed to have been first played approximately 100 years ago at the time of the First World War. During the ceremony this evening, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors and students from Engadine West Public School in New South Wales and students participating in the Australian National History Challenge. To commence this evening's ceremony, I invite you all to stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Thank you, boys and girls. You may now be seated. The Australian War Memorial was a vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed at the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and other operations for over more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Corporal John Jaegers. John David Jaegers was born in Carlton, Victoria, to Morgan and Bridget Jaegers of Carlton, Victoria, in 1895. His father had been born in Ireland but came to Australia as a child and ran the family business making gravestones and monuments. The Jaegers were a very prominent and devout Catholic family in Melbourne. John's father, Morgan, was described as a doughty champion of Ireland, who was a vocal advocate of home rule and a keen promoter of all things Irish. John Jaegers attended the Christian Brothers School in North Melbourne and shared his father's deep interest in Ireland. He was a founding member of the Young Men's Society for Study of Irish Art and Music and was the first secretary of the Young Ireland Society. Following his education, John Jaegers joined the State Service and became an officer of the Immigration Branch of the Lands Department. Morgan Jaegers objected to his underage son going to war, and it wasn't until John resorted to writing a lengthy and powerfully written plea from the Australian national standpoint that his father was finally swayed. With his father's permission, the 19-year-old John Jaegers enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force in March 1915. He was posted to the 24th Battalion and began training. In early May, shortly before he left for active service overseas, a large gathering of friends held a function to say goodbye to the young Private Jaegers. Following a number of patriotic speeches and toasts, John responded by saying that he was grateful for the compliments paid him that evening and that he was fully aware of the great effort required of him, and he promised he would do his best to make the turkey trot. A few days later, on the 10th of May 1915, Jaegers left Melbourne on board the troop ship Euripides. Jaegers served on Gallipoli, and it is reported in the newspapers that he was wounded by a shell blast at Lone Pine. On the 19th of September 1915, he was evacuated to a hospital in Malta, suffering from shell shock. He took best advantage of his recovery to see as much of Malta as he could, later saying that the Cathedral of Peter and Paul was the most beautiful sight I have ever looked on. Jaegers was in Malta for a short time before being sent to England, later writing, "Although the weather is bitterly cold, I am quite at home." Although he was offered a chance to remain in London with a clerical job, Jaegers opted to return to active service. He first went back to Egypt, where he rejoined the 24th Battalion, and then went on to France to fight on the Western Front. On the 28th of July 1916, the 24th Battalion was in the front line at Pozières. Jaegers, who had been promoted to corporal, was in an advanced position with his section commander. The two were killed instantly when a German shell exploded nearby. There was no chance of ever recovering his body. The Catholic chaplain of Jaegers Brigade wrote that he was a very good soldier, attentive to his work, conscientious in discharge of his duty, and never gave any trouble to his superior officers. Captain Frawley of the 24th Battalion wrote, "Throughout our battalion he was loved and admired as a thorough gentleman and an excellent soldier, and from our colonel downwards his loss is mourned. I knew him not only as an excellent soldier, but also as a fervent, devout and exemplary Catholic." Today, Corporal John Jaegers is commemorated on the memorial to the missing at Villers-Bretonneux. He was 21 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, amongst more than 60,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Corporal John David Jaegers, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Boys and girls, could you please stand for the ode and last post?
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this evening's last post ceremony. We would like to thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today, and we wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.